600 presentations. Oh, it's recording now? No, the rest of that story doesn't matter. The Holy Spirit got Father Thomas here, so we're very happy about that. But he's given over 600 presentations throughout the United States and internationally on topics of Salesian spirituality, social communications, Catholic education, and biblical theology. He's written and edited 10 and translated 10 books and more than 80 contributions to various scholarly and pastoral publications. He's a research fellow for the Catholic Leadership Institute, which had its office where the guys are meeting tonight down in St. Joe's Hall, or actually in Assumption, down the bottom Assumption Hall. He's appeared on radio, television, podcasts, and regional national markets. And for the Archdiocese, he served on the communication committees for a worldwide meeting of families when the Pope came over here in 2015. He's also served on the Episcopal delegate for the cause for the beatification and the canonization of Father Bill Atkinson. And we have a couple Bonner guys here, so that's something that we really, really enjoy. So we're thrilled to have you here, Father. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't tell you exactly where to go, but we're glad you found us.
If my voice shakes, it's because I'm still shivering from being outside wandering around. But it is nice to be here with you. Although you may be disappointed in not getting Dr. Larry Chapp, I fully understand. I'm the guy who hired Dr. Larry Chapp, so I know him well. He is a wizard with words. More importantly, the thought behind him, behind those words. And he would probably be much more entertaining than I am. But I will try to do him proud and want to speak with you briefly about Pope Leo XIV, and specifically a recent document that he published just last Saturday, in fact, that I'm guessing none of you have seen. Good. So I can say anything and you won't know. On January 24th each year, which is the feast day of St. Francis de Sales, there I got him in, the Holy Father publishes a message for what's called World Communications Day. It's always published on the 24th of January because Francis de Sales is the patron saint of journalists. And this was Pope Leo's first one, the first message that he wrote. So I thought it would be interesting to explore that a little bit with you, because his first message, I think, talks about a subject near and dear to him, and at least an experience near and dear to all of us. His message is all about artificial intelligence. You may recall that the reason he chose the name Leo is because of artificial intelligence. Not that AI came up with a name for him, that wasn't it. But he reminded the world that Pope Leo XIII was the Pope during the Industrial Revolution, which changed the economies of the world, right? The power of machines to do things. He said, nowadays we face another industrial revolution, and what artificial intelligence is doing for us and to us. So he chose the name Leo the 14th one. So he writes this message. He's talked a lot about artificial intelligence already, but this message is specifically geared to World Communications Day. Now, something you may not have heard of, which is fine, but every year there is a day dedicated to communications. It's the only day that was called for by the Second Vatican Council. And on this day, this annual celebration, we are called to reflect on the opportunities and challenges that modern means of social communication bring. So, the press, movies, television, radio, now digital devices, and now artificial intelligence. So every year there's this celebration. There's a theme announced for it in September of the previous year, on September 29th, which is the feast day of the archangels, Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, who happen to be the patron saints of radio. The message then gets published on January 24th, on the feast day of the patron saint of journalists. The church does these things, right? Has these dates. And then the celebration is always the Sunday before Pentecost. Now, it's a World Day of Communications. And so this is celebrated everywhere in the world except in the USA. To this day, I have been trying, but to this day, I have not gotten a reason from anybody as to why that is the case. It's not part of our national church calendar. Not that anybody's opposed to it, I don't think, but there's probably just too much else going on in June every year. But anyway, for this celebration, the Pope always provides a message, something to think about. And even though World Communications Day is not celebrated elsewhere, we're going to celebrate it here now. Well, we're not going to celebrate it, but we are going to look at the message, all right? And I think it's valuable to look at because it not only provides interesting information, I hope, but it gives us something to reflect on. It gives us something to think about in terms of our lives, which in effect is what you're doing on retreat, right? All right, so Pope Leo is interested, concerned about artificial intelligence, not because of the technology, and he makes it very clear in this message. His message is not about technology. I mean, there's a lot more people in the world that know about computer technology than the Pope does. But his concern, his rightful concern, is with anthropology. Us. What does it mean to be a human being? Almost sounds like a silly question because, we are. But what does it mean that we are human? In light of this technological revolution. And so he titles his message, Preserving Human Faces and Voices. It's an interesting choice. Preserving human faces and voices. This is the opening sentence. Our faces and voices are unique, distinctive features of every person. Every one of you has a distinct face and a distinct voice. That's not just an accident. That's not just, oh, okay. But those faces and voices, he says, reveal your own unrepeatable identity. It's who you are. You don't have another face, and you never will. You don't have a different voice, although it may go up or down with your age, right? But it's yours. And, he adds, faces and voices are the defining elements of every encounter with others. That's how people know you. By your face. By your voice. They can see you coming, or they can hear you coming. And in either case, probably pray. Oh my God. Right? Sure. So this truth about who we are, that we are unique, irrepeatable people. There's never been someone like you. There never will be another. And that we encounter each other precisely through our face and our voice, at least to start. All right. In light of that truth, which bears recalling, where does AI come in? He makes reference in the letter, it's kind of, well, it's not really a swipe at them, but it's a response to them. All right, you may know that the persons of the year in 2025 were the architects of AI. So Pope Leo, I can sort of see that little grin on his face as he's writing his message. He sort of he doesn't make a comment directly about them, but he says it's not just his thought here is it's not just the architects of AI that we should be paying attention to. It's all of us. And he says specifically in the letter, as a general principle, no one of us can elude responsibility for the future we are building. It's not just the computer whizzes that are building our future. It's all of us. Now, you may be sitting there saying, yeah, I don't think so, because, I don't know anything about AI. I don't know how to work computers like that. But here's the thing. Every single one of you, no matter your youth or your experience, uses AI. If you've ever asked Google anything, you're using AI. If you turned on your GPS to get here, which, by the way, doesn't have specific buildings to get to, as I just found out. But how many of you use GPS in your car? How many of you use it even when you know where you're going? Welcome to the world of AI. You hear AI's voice every time you talk to Alexa or Siri, and you so like hearing her voice. And she doesn't talk back, usually. Actually, there's a fabulous movie, if you get snowed in and want to watch a really good movie. It's called Her. Brilliantly acted by, what was his name? Joaquin Phoenix. It's a story about a guy who falls in love with his operating system. It's brilliant. It really exposes what we're talking about. You see the face of AI every time you look at a meme or a video and laugh at it or enjoy it or share it with someone. AI affects all of us. And so the Holy Father says, in light of that experience, all of us are responsible for it. And so he advocates in this letter, particularly towards the end, the importance of learning about it. He has this call for AI literacy. He specifically says, as Catholics, we can and must contribute to the effort of literacy so that individuals, and especially young people, can acquire critical thinking skills and grow in freedom of spirit. Thinking, freedom. Two really critical and specifically human attributes that are going to be more and more necessary in a world of AI. Hence this talk. All right, I'm not going to go through the whole letter for you. Actually, it's not that long. It's only like 5 pages. But just to talk about two of the things that he mentions, the two big things that he mentions. He begins with experience, with human experience, a basic experience common to all of us. And he says, we've gotten to the point where we have this naive and unquestioning reliance on artificial intelligence. And we rely on artificial intelligence, he says, as if it were an omniscient friend. And he tells us how. He says, AI nowadays is a source of all knowledge. Next time you go into a physician's office, you may be greeted with a computer. Type in your symptoms, and it will tell you what's wrong with you and dispense the proper medication. They already have AI pharmacists because they can count more exactly than the guy behind the counter. Will that be accurate? Will a computer get it right more often than a doctor does? AI, the Pope says, serves as an archive of every memory. All the photos you have on your phone. That's your archive of your memory. You don't need to remember the experience, look up the photo. And nowadays, you don't even have to remember the real experience because you can doctor the photo. Take out the bits you don't like, get rid of the people you don't like. AI, the Pope says, acts as an oracle of all advice. You want advice? Ask AI. Just driving out here today, I heard again for the millionth time the commercial for online therapy. You want to feel better? AI will help you. In fact, I came across in writing about this, there was a study done, I think it was last July, among teenagers throughout the US. Just about 1/3 of them think that speaking to artificial devices is more satisfying than talking to a human being. Think about that. 1/3 of kids would rather talk to a machine than to people. Because the machine tells them what they want. So Pope Leo is saying, the good side of AI, it's very helpful. It saves us time. It saves us energy. It's certainly more efficient than anyone you know. And so we very easily start relying on it. It makes life easier. Of course, we're going to rely on it. The danger is the more we rely on it to do what we need to get done, the more that our human abilities erode. For example, he says the ability to think analytically and creatively is fading. You don't have to think about the answer, just believe it. AI will give it to you. We tend to blindly accept what it gives to us rather than ask questions or challenge what it says. The Pope says that the ability to understand meaning is eroding. In other words, the value of things. How do you make judgments about that? He says the ability to distinguish between syntax and semantics, which is a fancy way of saying we've forgotten how to take context into things. You watch a video, you see 10 seconds of it. Oh, that's what must have happened. What about the 2 minutes before it and the 2 minutes after it? Changes the story. I can give you a perfect example of this, although it's kind of before the age of AI. I was watching the news one night. It was at the time that Pope John Paul II had died, right? If you remember this, there was a big news story on. I think CNN was the one that had it first. When they discovered the Pope's last will and testament, right? Do you remember this? Right? They discovered his last will and testament, and in there, as CNN reported, the Pope had referenced retiring at some point, which was unheard of. And so this was the big news story. And I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't sound right. And so I looked up his last will and testament, which was only in Polish. So somebody translated it into Italian, thankfully, because I can't read Polish. So I read the Italian version through and through and through, and I read it again and again and again, and I said, there's nothing in here about retiring. Then it dawned on me. In Italian, the word is ritirare, retire. But in the context of a last will and testament, the word means dying. The Pope's writing his last will, and someday I am going to die, not retire. So CNN had a big news flash, and I called the local television station where I saw the story, and I know those guys. And I said, look, I know you get your feed from CNN, but they're wrong. Right? They got the story wrong. Thankfully, the local news station believed me, because while they had it on the 6 o'clock news, they took it off for the 11 o'clock news. But it's an example of, right, if you plug that word ritirare into an online AI dictionary, you're going to get retire until you think about it. So we're losing these human abilities, the Pope says, and he simply says, look, don't renounce your own thinking. Or positively, think for yourself. Because otherwise, as he puts it, you're hiding your face and silencing your voice. So there's this personal dimension that he's calling forth from us. There's also, and this is the second point, a sort of bigger world dimension to this. And he's talking about the idea of the relationship between AI and reality. Now, just to give you a sense, right, what we know, where we've experienced the benefits of AI to this point is in problem solving, right? Specific tasks. Get me to Malvern. GPS will do that for you and give you different options. But the goal of the developers of AI, the dream, if you will, is to make this intelligence more and more autonomous. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines AI this way. It says the term is frequently applied to the project of developing systems. Technically, it's called agentic AI. AI acts as its own agent. That's what it means. The project of developing systems endowed with intellectual processes characteristic of human beings, such as the ability to reason, to discover meaning, to generalize, or to learn from past experience. Translation: the better AI gets at what it does, the more it's not going to need you. It will do it on its own. We have self-driving cars. They don't need you. they'll figure out how to get there and get you there. Now, just 2 comments on that let me add before I get back to what the Pope has to say. Just take that definition, right? AI is developing systems endowed with processes characteristic of humans, such as the ability to reason. False. AI will never reason. It can't, no matter how good it gets. The intelligence in artificial intelligence is not one that can think about thinking. It appears really smart because it's doing stuff that you couldn't figure out for yourself. But it's not thought. It's not reasoning. AI doesn't learn anything. It might have more and more data to go on, and it does. But is that learning? It can't ponder the value of what it says. It's all the same thing. It's just data. Right? So I think we got to be careful with the words we use. Right? Learning, reasoning, thinking, intelligence. It's a machine. It's a really powerful machine, and a complex machine, and a helpful machine. But it's a machine. Let's not make it more than it is. Pope Leo talks about this using a term that I'm probably going to butcher here, but anthropomorphization. I got it. AI is anthropomorphizing things. It's making it look human. Right? And it does appear to be human. So we have chatbots, we have robots, and they act humanly, it seems. These AI machines can actually be affectionate, or appear to be. They have them in senior citizens' homes now. Get ready, boys. The robot will sit beside you and talk to you. Now, some of you are smiling like, hey, that's pretty cool. More than I have right now. And it will say all of those tender, loving things that you hope it says. And we like that. We talk to it as if I'm talking to someone because it's comfortable. That robot, that chatbot, that AI is always going to be present and accessible, even before we get to the home. Right? This senior citizens' home, I mean. Right? Because if you have a computer, heck, if you have a phone, you have access to it. It's right there. In fact, nowadays, AI is not only available, it tends to be forced upon us. It's going to do what you want, whether you ask it to or not. If you search for something on a computer, the result you get is AI. Every time a pop-up shows up on your computer, or your text message is self-corrected, that's AI. And trust me, it doesn't always get it right. Ask my secretary. She hears me screaming every once in a while at the computer. I got the right word, leave it alone. I know grammar better than Google does. So it's doing things for us, which again, we like, we appreciate, but I'm not doing that. And so the Pope says, right, AI is occupying, invading and occupying our spheres of intimacy or relationship, our relationship with things, with people. In fact, you talk to AI. Well, usually we only talk to people. I mean, unless you're crazy. He says it's invading and occupying our spheres of intimacy, and therefore it is becoming, he says, the hidden architects of our emotional states. The hidden architects of our emotions. The robot in the home that I'm talking to makes me feel better, happier. The pop-ups on my computer screen make me angry. And I'm yelling at the computer, which is just dumb. But it's shaping us. And this is a principle that we forget about technology. It was given voice long ago, right? We create machines, and then the machines create us. Every technology that we've created turns around and, in a sense, creates or shapes or affects us. Think very simply about a television. It has shaped you. You know how? How long do you think you can pay close attention to something? Right? Most people, it's about 15 minutes, which is why I'm very happy you're still listening to me. And usually it's why I walk around, just to change what you're looking at. Why is that? Why is people's attention span about 15 minutes? Because that's when you get a commercial. And you can go up and go to the bathroom, go to the kitchen, right? We've been trained. So technology affects us even when we don't know it. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily good or bad. It's just the way it is. The same can be said about artificial intelligence. It affects us. The effects that Pope Leo points to is really the power of AI to simulate things. Right? It simulates what human beings do. It creates what he calls a parallel reality. You see this if ever you've asked yourself, is that real? What I'm looking at. Because AI creates things in such a way that it's difficult to distinguish reality from fiction. The funniest thing I saw, it was, I guess, before the last election, and I think it was Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Dressed in beautiful fall sweaters and colors and walking down the path with the beautiful fall leaves, and they were arm in arm and chatting and smiling, and like that would ever happen. Or, closer to home, just yesterday, one of the newsletters that was sent out from the Oblates, one of these online newsletters we send every week, was talking about the week between January 24th and February 2nd. So January 24th is the Feast of Francis de Sales. January 31st today is St. John Bosco. February 2nd is Father Louis Brisson, who was our founder. And it was talking about this is our season, right? Beautiful. So there's an image with the article, and it's an image of, supposedly, Francis de Sales, John Bosco, and Louis Brisson. And Francis de Sales and Louis Brisson were sitting in the chair, and John Bosco was standing behind them with his arms around them. It was a beautiful image. I said to myself, where on earth did they come up with that? First of all, these guys live hundreds of years apart. They're not going to be in the same room. They're not going to be sitting down before the fireplace with John Bosco with his arms around. What are we doing? It's a nice picture. Probably made a lot of people smile. But it's false. It's not true. And even the one image was just not even close to being real. Right? So at this point in our lives, we can see, what looks fake and what doesn't. But AI is going to get so much better. It's going to be hard to distinguish reality from fiction. And more at risk, AI, the Pope says, can usurp our faces and voices. It can take your face and use it anywhere. Or your voice. Right? This is what the criminal element likes to do. Right? You get a phone call, or somebody gets a phone call and they think it's you because it sounds like you. Or this video, they think it's you because it looks like you, but it's not. That's what we get with identity theft and deep fakes and all of those things. That's the risk. So again, Pope Leo is trying to point out the importance here of realizing that this incredibly powerful, incredibly efficient, incredibly helpful tool also comes with risks. So, the fact, though, is that AI is here to stay. Right? And Pope Leo is not a Luddite. Right? He's not anti-technology, not in any way, shape, or form. So the question becomes, what can we do about this, besides being better educated about it? Well, again, here Pope Leo is going to offer some very solid advice. Essentially, he says, I'll just bring it down to two things. First and foremost, be who you are. Be you. Not the AI version of you, but be you. Right? Faces and voices, this is what makes you you. Faces and voices, the Pope says, are sacred. God who created us, these are his words, God who created us in his image and likeness gave them to you. When he called you to life through the word he addressed to you. And when he showed us ourselves, I would add, in the face and voice of the word become flesh. Again, right? Why does Jesus become human? Because he needs to have a face and a voice so that we can see and hear God. And then Pope Leo reminds us that who you are is not predetermined, which is what AI does, right? It's all based on predetermined data. You are not predetermined. Each of us, he writes, possesses an irreplaceable and inimitable vocation that originates from our own lived experience and becomes manifest through our interaction with others. Each one of us has the task, the duty, the joy of becoming who we are. We're always becoming who we are. You're not the same person you were last year. You're still you. You can only be you. But who the you is always developing, thanks to the grace of God. So be you is the first thing. Second thing, keep AI in its proper place. Here's where the Augustinian comes out in Pope Leo. He's often talking about and acting on the proper order of things. It's an Augustine, big Augustine theme. And he writes this at the end of his letter. We need to cherish the gift of communication as the deepest truth of humanity. Communication is the deepest truth of humanity. It's how we came to be, God spoke, and it's how we interact with others. This deepest truth of humanity, he says, to which all technological innovation should also be oriented. Not the other way around. Technology is oriented to human, not the other way around. Technology is subordinate to being human, not the other way around. He reminds us of that. And so then he ends kind of where he began. He said, what we need are for faces and voices to speak for people again. And I would add, to speak to people again. So if you're wondering what to do in this happy yet risky world of AI, begin with yourself. Be people-oriented. Resist the urge just to text someone. Call them. Actually speak to them. Texting's fun, it's fast, it's easy. Emailing, very efficient. And it's good. And keep doing that. But don't forget to speak to another face, another voice, so that they hear your voice. If you FaceTime them, they'll see your face. Be people-oriented in our communications. And then, I would suggest, when you go back home, extend that also to your family. Right. Here's the very practical advice, and maybe you do this already. When at home and you're gathered around the dining table, absolutely no phones. Not even on the table. Right? The research has shown nobody has to be on a phone, but if the phone is on the table, everyone is distracted. So just, in fact, no phones whenever you're gathered with someone else. You can do that at home, I hope. Again, there's research. In fact, there's a fun practice. I don't know who came up with this, but whenever a group of people goes out to dinner, make everybody who's out to dinner with you put their phone in the center of the table. And the first one who reaches for it gets the bill. Just a fun little practice. But you know, we can't go anywhere without these, and I'll be the first one to tell you that, and that's fine. But you don't have to be on it all the time. Remember that it's a tool. Keep things in their proper order. And I'll give you, I should probably tell you to turn the video off when I give you this example, but I won't. I teach social communications at the seminary. I teach about all this. That's what they hired me for. And I remember teaching the guys one day and talking about this very thing about, no phones at the table. And then I went to dinner that night at the seminary, and I realized the worst culprits here are not the students, but the priests. Right? Every 2 minutes, they're pulling out their phone while we're eating dinner. I'm sitting there thinking, all right, why? And I asked one of them, right, why? He said, well, it may be the bishop calling. It may be urgent. And I said to myself, you can call the bishop back later. And besides, there is absolutely nothing in this world that urgent. And I have every respect for the Archbishop. But there's nothing in the world that's urgent. In fact, the only two things that are urgent in life, if somebody's bleeding or not breathing, and you can't do anything about that with your phone. You don't have to use it right then and there. We do have to use them, however. It's our world. It's how the world exists. It's how church exists. It's going to. This world of social communications technology affects all of us. So use it, but use it well. And use it for what it's supposed to be. Not a replacement for human beings, but a tool to help us become who we are. Now you're probably wishing that you had had a chatbot of Larry Chapp instead of me talking, but that's it. That's all I've got. So thank you for listening.
Things like here, Elon Musk talking about, oh, no one's made it work.
Did Pope Leo address any of the issues like unemployment and the economy? Yes and no. Not specifically. He's not an economist. Right? He's not going to speak to those kinds of particulars. But he does say, if we're going to be educated about AI, we have to be educated about its economic impact. Absolutely. So in as much as it affects who we are as people, he addresses it in various places, not just in this message, or not even in this message. But he does, he makes reference to it. Though, again, he's not an economist, so he's not going to get into the particulars of it. Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to have to do a different kind of work. Because yes, is AI going to replace jobs? Absolutely. It will also create jobs. Most people will tell you. So yeah, it's going to change things. It already has. Come on, I wasn't that clear. Do I think priests are using it for homilies? In some cases, I hope so. Actually, I teach homiletics, and I teach them that they should. Not to replace their own words, but for research purposes. I mean, research nowadays is much simpler with AI. Right? I don't have to go through 19 books in a library. I just ask my computer and it comes up with it in 20 seconds. So it can be helpful. It can summarize things. It can help me learn something I don't know, say, about the sacred scriptures. But if I'm relying on that, if that's replacing what I'm saying, that's a problem. Right? Then yeah, why am I there? But the day may come, right, when the homilies you hear are actually delivered by chatbots, because there aren't enough of us to go around. Yes. Right. Sure. Yeah. AI is going to give you what AI gives you back in response to your questions will always depend on how you word the question, which is where human thinking still is needed. right? So we got to figure out how best to, and nowadays there are college programs. You can get a certificate. I think it's at Temple. They were one of the first, basically in how to ask questions of AI, which is fascinating, right? But how to get what you're really looking for, right? Yeah, there's know-how to that. Yes. Sure. That, in effect, that's what the Pope's talking about. And yeah, that's already happening. The more especially for kids, the more they rely on computers and screens, the less they know how to interact with other people. Um, I was going somewhere with this. Yeah, again, the study, right? A third of teenagers would rather talk to AI than to another person or find it satisfying. And it's not satisfying, but it's not the same thing as talking to another human being. Absolutely. Should kids have phones and computers and stuff? That's a humongous question. Um, yes and no. Yes, if they also realize, talking to human beings and just playing with kids, right? There's a whole movement nowadays in education about making kids play, right? Because that's how you learn, um, and not play computer games, which is certainly valuable. But to well, here's the story I was going for. I learned this lesson in college. When I was teaching in college, I used to have this little exercise, and it always came on a Friday. I was talking about discipline and sacrifice. And I brought the big basket into my room, and I said, okay, any of you who would like to give up your phone for the weekend, practice some self-sacrifice. They all went, huh? What? Come on, give it up for a weekend. I'll give it back to you on Monday. We'll talk about how your weekend went. So I did this a couple years, and I would always have a couple volunteers, and I'd ask them on Monday morning, how was your weekend? And it was either, that was the most blissful weekend I've ever had, or that was the most terrifying weekend I ever had. Till one young lady said to me, Father, she said, I loved it. It was absolutely great. I had no phone for the weekend. And if ever my mother gets hold of you, you are in serious trouble. Problem often is not the kids with phones, it's their parents. Yeah, they're right. Right. There's all kinds of variations. There's all kinds of variations in school districts. Again, that the solution, I am of the opinion, this is me, just me speaking. I'm of the opinion banning things is never a solution. Slowing it down, teaching kids proper use of computers will serve them much better. And sometimes that means, no, you don't have a phone until you're whatever age. But that's a humongous discussion and debate. Depends on if the chatbot knows what it's talking about. No, this isn't meant to be, and certainly Pope Leo's message is not meant to be a scare tactic. Uh, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Let's see if we can stop it. Not at all, because the world's going that way with AI, no matter what. It's already there. So let's learn about it. Let's make the most of it, but let's always remember what it is. It's not us. It's not human. So don't lose ourselves in this machine world. What do you have to fight back against? I don't know. Yeah, there are going to be problems. This is what regulators are for. This is what legislators are for. This is, and the Pope spends some time in this letter talking about the different folks responsible for all of this, and what they should be doing and thinking about and cooperating with one another, just like with any technology. So no, he's not trying to create a panic, not at all. But he's trying to remind us, right, it's your face and your voice, not a machine's. Somebody here. They'll show you how it works. Oh, sorry. What's going on in the world of education, particularly Catholic education? I think what you're seeing is hopefully the best of both, in the sense of teaching children the human abilities to think, to learn, to remember, to create, all of those non-machine things, but also how to use computers properly and well, and use them for research. But remember that it's the machine, right? They're not your words. Use it for art, right? Use the machines in a helpful way, but not in a replacing way. And it's going to vary from school to school and district to district and that sort of thing. Yes, sir. AI contributing to the growing political, moral divide. Sure. I mean, any kind of communication does. Now, is AI contributing to the growing divide in politics and social questions and all of that? Sure, because it's communication. Right? That's where the division is. Now, is it intentionally, purposefully doing that? Are some people using it for that purpose? Probably. Does it have to be? No. But as a communications mechanism, again, it affects us. Just take a simple example, and you probably know this already, right? Everything you've ever purchased online, the computer knows. Right? That's why it suggests things to you. Right? And I remember somebody was just telling me the story the other day that their young daughter, I guess it was, no, actually it was an older sister of this guy. She said she buys this, I don't know, whatever it was online, and the computer comes back at the checkout and says, "You may also like," and she says, "Oh, I do. I do. I do." And she ended up spending 5 times as much, right? That's how it works. Right? So where was I? I was going somewhere with that. So yeah, it knows you, so to speak, based on what you do, right? And so Pope Leo will say, again, be who you are, beware of who you are online, right? Because the algorithms remember that, and AI even more so. So does it contribute, to answer your question, does it contribute to social communication? Absolutely, for better or worse. Yeah, it's what we call, in the business, it's what we call filter bubbles. Right? If you have a certain opinion or a viewpoint, it will give you more and more and more of that till that's the only thing you ever see. And it's like being in a bubble. That's just the nature of it.
You know, it's reminding me, that some of our innate abilities for both. So, I mean,
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Absolutely. How many of you remember your very first phone number? How many know what your cell phone number is without looking? Yeah, absolutely. We change, right? It changes us, it affects us. Now, the question will be, is that necessarily a problem? I recall when I was teaching in the university, and we were debating this, and I was debating it with the students. I said, you don't know how to memorize anything anymore. I mean, that's how we learned. And I get the English grammar book, and the priest handed it to me and said, memorize this. And I did. The student commented back to me and said, we don't need to memorize anymore. I don't need to know what 8 times 4 is. Take me 2 seconds to get it on my phone. And I thought, the student was right. That's not a skill they need as much as we did. Except, personally speaking, I want my brain surgeon to have remembered what he learned and not take time to look at it. Right. They have different skills. Right? They can use their thumbs faster than anything. Right? They know how to look stuff up. They know how to find information. It's a different skill. Where it makes us, sort of more or less who we are, that's the question. What's it doing to who we are? Right? And with that, we got time. All right. With that, I'm going to end it, because if you don't get dinner, you're not going to be very happy with me. All right. So thank you all. And I will tell Dr. Chap that you clapped. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father. It's great blessing you were here. And I think your topic was so appropriate for today, because Mary B downstairs talked about Carlo Acutis and how he used technology. And so there's some good that can come from it. And we really appreciate you being here. Thank you. All right, prosit.